Bend Around the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 51. Hear my friend, I am silent. Loki left Stark sleeping in their bed. He dressed quietly and headed back into the cargo hold. When he got there, Drongo was sitting on a large crate, fully dressed in winter clothes now, and Hatchet was comfortably lounging on a different box not that far away from him, scribbling some things on a piece of paper. "Thank you for staying here, Drongo," Loki said when he was close enough.
"It was no bother,"
the giant replied and stood up, stretching lazily.
"Juyu stayed for a while too, but she decided to check up on her sister not that long ago."
"Get some rest, eat something," Loki said. "I have things under control."
"He's annoying, but he did not make any trouble,"
Drongo told him before he left. Hatchet smirked at that, obviously listening to their conversation. "So, was he jealous?" Hatchet asked once it was only the two of them. Loki hummed non-committally at the answer, but it still made the elf smile up at him. "You're welcome," he said cheekily. "Right, of course." Loki walked up behind him, slid his hands down on his shoulders, and dug in his fingers. Hard! Hatchet winced and straightened up right away. He leaned closer, without loosening his grip one bit.
"Don't play games with him,"
he warned in a quiet but stern tone. "Aye, my prince," Hatchet said, glancing at him from the corner of his eye.
"As you wish."
Loki nodded and let go of him. Hatchet rolled his shoulders and glared at him half-heartedly. Then he kept looking at him searchingly, trying to put everything together and figure out the situation. "He's not just a lover, is he?" he asked then.
"No,"
Loki answered simply. Hatchet kept looking at him for a moment, then his eyes widened just a little in realization. "It's serious, isn't it? Not even just a little. This is completely serious."
"Yes, it is,"
Loki said. It was best to make things clear as soon as possible. "Loki, he's mortal."
"Not a word,"
Loki interrupted him with a look. Hatchet knew better than to start arguing. He looked away. It took him a few moments to digest the news. "Oh, that's... not what I was expecting. That's like... Whoa! That is splendid, truly. Wonderful news. And, sorry then, I guess." He settled on finally. "I'll behave from now on."
"You're not really good at that,"
Loki replied right away. Hatchet huffed out a laugh. "No, but I can make an honest effort. It makes me considerably less annoying." That was certainly true. Loki just hoped it was going to be enough to keep things peaceful between Hatchet and the crew, and most importantly, Stark. Hatchet stood up and held out the piece of paper he was writing on up until now. "I wrote down how much you can expect to get for the things you have. I assume you don't want to sell any of the island lore, though."
"Of course not,"
Loki agreed and took the paper. "I wrote down the lowest selling price, so if they offer less than that, you just tell them to shove it up their butts. If the Zdat tries to be stingy, just let me know and I can get you other buyers. The corporate guys saw how you have an inside man, so they probably won't try to screw you over again."
"That is certainly good to know,"
Loki nodded. "As for the repairs and supplies, well, Drongo told me some of the extent of the damage. It ain't gonna be cheap to fix that, I'm sure you already know."
"Stark can fix it on his own if he has suitable tools and materials,"
Loki told him.
"Maybe he just needs some extra hands to get it done quicker."
"Oh, really? Well, not that expensive then. You can write me a list. I can ask around and get quality for a good price."
"Is this what you do here?"
Loki asked. "Mainly, the advantage of being understood by anyone," Hatchet said. "I'm sort of an in-between man, getting buyers and suppliers together, so I always know who sells what and for how much." Loki nodded again.
"All right, we shall do that," he said. "Stark will have to be the one to make the list, and we do need to sell first."
"I can start with the supplies then, food and other necessities. You don't have any special requirements there. I can arrange it so that it's delivered in a few days after you have the money."
"That sounds fine," Loki said. "I need to see how much we have left, though. Come on."
He started walking further inside, and Hatchet, of course, followed. "Are you going to tell me why you're not in Asgard at some point?" Hatchet asked after a few moments of silence.
"Eventually,"
Loki said. "It's bad, isn't it? Not much could have made you leave."
"Later, Hatchet, I promise."
Loki looked at him. Hatchet stared back for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I can wait," he said. "Take your time." He was not going to tell him now, not when Hatchet had yet to come clean about his true intentions. He would have to be the one to speak the truth first. Loki would offer his own story in return after that. Also, not even Stark knew everything yet, and he had to be the first one to know. The next day, Vismio came back to discuss what they wanted to sell. While Stark glared at the list Hatchet made for a moment, he still put it to good use. It clearly annoyed the corporate man that they were this well informed. He still tried to get the prices as low as possible, but Stark was too good at discussing business. He made a point about stating that they had possible buyers outside of Zidat, and if Vismio did not offer more, they could simply pay for the trading permit instead. In the end, they sold things at a decent price. They were clearly not Vismio's favorites at this point. Stark insisted they pay Hatchet back first. He did not want to be in his debt, no doubt. He was sure Stark never owed money to anyone in his life. It must have been a strange experience for him. Hatchet promised to be back to tell them how much it was going to cost to get the ship stocked again. The only reason Loki did not give him free rein was because he knew Stark would disapprove. Hatchet smiled knowingly and shook his head when Loki told him to check back before ordering the supplies. But of course he did as he was told. It was strange in a way, how familiar it was, how quickly he fell back into the rhythm of having Hatchet around. They always had an interesting relationship, and while only a day passed, it certainly looked like nothing changed at all. Hatchet still showed him the usual amount of respect, but that did not stop him from talking back or calling him names. But truly, those were half-affectionate monikers mostly. Not everyone understood how something like a bastard could be considered a term of endearment, but it was when it came to Hatchet. Only those he kept at arm's length did he call sweets, handsome, and the like. Those were just empty words and nothing more. He cussed a lot more when he was relaxed around someone, or when he was agitated enough to stop paying attention to superfluous things. Loki was used to the way he went from, "my dear prince," to "you smarmy fucker," in a matter of moments. But it was always amusing to see the reaction of others. He meant it when he said that Hatchet was loyal and reliable, even after learning the harsh lesson of betrayal, how sometimes not even those who were closest to him could be trusted. He still believed that. Hatchet did not care if he was a warrior or a mage, if he was a prince or not, whether he was an Odin's son. He was the only companion he had who was not primarily a friend of Thor's, who didn't only try to get close to him to get closer to his so-called brother. Hatchet never liked Thor's arrogance. How he expected Hatchet to treat him with respect and kindness like everyone else did. Only Hatchet did not give his respect so easily. That obviously did not change about him. When Loki asked him about his dislike of Thor, he told him not once that there were too many things Thor refused to see, too many things he dismissed as not worthy of his attention. Hatchet told him not once that if Thor did not learn on his own, fate would teach him a lesson instead. And fate is a cruel bitch when it comes to lessons. Oh, how right he was in hindsight. Only fate was cruel to Loki, even more so than it was to Thor. So it was a strange sort of nostalgia, bittersweet in a way because he did not know how long it would last. Sooner or later he would have to tell him that he was imprisoned in Asgard, guilty of treason, patricide. He had to tell what he really was. The elves did not despise the Jotnar the way the Aesir did, but he still could not imagine it going well. But at least he could enjoy a figment of his old life without rage tearing up his insides. At least he could think of the past without wanting to claw his very skin off. At least for now, he still had some good memories to hold on to, but he could already see them slipping away once the truth came out. He did not even dare think about Stark's reaction. Telling Hatchet filled him with unease. Telling Stark made him feel nothing but mind-numbing fear. But the worst was still that he knew he could not keep silent forever. "My, you've grown a lot, Princeling," a familiar voice called as Loki watched the enormous bear hit the wet grass with a loud thud, a spear sticking out from its neck and Loki's long dagger stuck to the hilt in its side. Loki learned to know Wolves Woods well, the forest surrounding Frey's castle. Getting lost once was humiliating enough, so he did not allow it to happen again. He learned the paths he should follow, some old oaks and rock that were easy to recognize. He never ventured too deeply into the forest, but he was confident in his knowledge about the outskirts. This should not have happened. This year, their mother decided to visit Alfheim sooner, and while the realm was called a land of eternal spring, it did have colder seasons. Loki did not complain about the crispy air. It was refreshing, if anything. It was also a lot easier to navigate in the forest without all the thick and lush undergrowth that would soon cover the ground. For now, the grass was young and the trees were barely budding. It was supposed to be safe. This part of the forest was not supposed to be crawling with wild beasts. The elf hopped down from the large rock he was standing on and walked closer to Loki and the dead bear.
I could have handled it,
Loki said as he finally stood up and wiped some of the blood that splattered on his face. The elf gripped his spear and yanked it out of the bear's neck. Loki leaned down to get his dagger out of it as well.
Maybe, the elf shrugged, but you probably would have gotten yourself some nasty scars. Or was that the point? I hear you Aesir folk like that.
Loki did not deign that with an answer. He yanked his dagger out. It was, of course, covered in blood, just like most of Loki's clothes. When the spear pierced the bear's neck, the blood gushed everywhere, and of course Loki got hit by most of it.
So, hunting on your own again?
The elf asked, and Loki glared at him. Why did it have to be the same elf? Because it was. 3 years may have passed, but Loki would recognize him anywhere. He was even scruffier looking than before. His clothes were a bit more worn, and this time he was also covered in mud.
I was just taking a walk,
Loki informed him as he slid his dagger back into his belt.
I thought these bears stayed close to the hills,
he added with a frown.
The elf nodded. Hi, but the creek flooded, he said. It washed away almost all crossings, even some bridges. The animals are either stuck on that side or this side. Not to mention all sorts of other creatures are as well. The town is close. Why are they not avoiding this area?
Loki asked.
They would if there was enough food left on this side, the elf told him. Hungry beasts ain't so skittish about wandering into a town. The town needs to be told then, Loki said. My uncle needs to be told.
The elf shrugged.
Probably,
he said as he crouched it down next to the dead bear.
They'll notice soon enough, though. What are you doing? Loki asked. Not leaving all the good meat and fur here to rot, the elf said. So I'm going to skin it and take what I can. You plan to eat from a bear?
Loki asked, wrinkling his nose.
You can eat any sort of meat if you're hungry enough, Princeling.
He stuck his spear in the ground, adjusted the crossbow on his back, and pulled a large hunting knife from his belt to get to work.
I've never seen an elf with a crossbow before,
Loki observed. Elves were excellent archers with great sight who used long bows with remarkable skill. Some had short bows, but even that was rare.
It's an arbalest, the elf corrected. You want to help? The blood's gonna attract predators.
Why would I want to help? Loki asked, crossing his arms over his chest.
It's your guild too,
the elf told him, glancing up. Loki just stared at him.
You can keep the fur if you help me. I have no use for it right now.
Loki looked at the dead beast. It was large. When it stood on its hind legs, it was at least 8 feet tall. It had to be way over 1,000 pounds as well. Its coat was muddy and covered in blood right now, but the fur was long and almost completely black. A good kill. A worthy beast to defeat. Having its fur to show around as his trophy could be really good, especially upon his return to Asgard. It could be very, very good indeed. He was allowed to join hunts now, of course, but even his largest kill was way beneath the size of this bear. Not even Thor's gigantic boar from last year, or his great stag from the year before was this big.
My dagger's not good for skinning, he said as he dropped down on the ground next to the elf. You got another knife?
The elf turned and looked at him, his violet eyes gazing at him curiously for a second. Then he got a smaller knife from his boot.
I hope you know how to properly skin,
the elf said. Loki took the knife and scoffed at him.
Of course I know.
Not afraid to get your hands dirty then, eh? Good! The elf nodded with a small smirk. He didn't offer any instructions or asked again if Loki knew what he was doing. It was a nice change of pace from the court hunts in Asgard, where the older warriors could not stop repeating what he was supposed to do over and over again. Like they did not believe that he knew exactly what he was doing with his knife. But that's what he got in Asgard, for studying magic.
What's your name, then?
Loki asked after some silence.
You surely know that I am Loki.
The elf just focused on his work. Loki thought that he was not going to get an answer, but then the elf took a large breath.
I don't have one, he said.
You don't have a name? Loki repeated dubiously.
No, that's not true. Everyone has a name. I don't, the elf answered simply. That cannot be. Your parents had to name you something. That didn't bother, he said. But blood, predators, the elf said, giving him a stern look. Keep working. Not many believed it, but Loki did know when to keep his mouth shut. The hard, dangerous glint in the elf's eyes was a clear sign that it was time to do so. He did not ask any more questions, just continued to work in silence. He ended up accompanying Hatchet to a different district, and Stark didn't even complain about it. He was busy preparing the plans for the repairs, and he did not want Hatchet to get the tools and materials on his own. Both Drongo and Juyu offered to accompany them, but Loki declined. He was rather sure that Hatchet was not going to confess just yet, but it was still best to have the window of opportunity open. Hatchet would not talk in front of the others. Also, it was nice to spend some time away from the crew. Not that he was fed up with them, but spending so much time in enclosed spaces with them all made Loki crave at least a few hours away from the ship. District 10 was not really crowded. The streets were wide and many vehicles sped by on the road. There were not as many pedestrians here as around the docks. No small shops and smoky little taverns either. Hatchet explained briefly what there was to know about the main districts, and Loki kept the information in mind in case the repairs made them stay here for a longer time. Hatchet himself lived in District 9 right now. It was his base of operations, as he called it. It was at the edge of the city, but not full with corporate docks or aerodromes. It was more of a center for continental trade. They came to District 10 to search for the best materials to repair the main body of the ship where the pod cut itself in during the attack. Stark gave exact instructions about what sort of metal could be used. There was a large selection of suitable materials for different prices, but in the end they picked the tradesmen who offered to deliver the goods for free. Getting the right tools was an altogether different matter and required a lot longer search, even if Hatchet knew most of the merchants in the district. Loki knew Stark was going to be delighted to put his hands on all of his new toys. Loki could already picture it. The way he would examine one after another, how he would test their use. Then he would set to work like he did in his workshop all the time, completely focused and buzzing with energy. He was also sure that Stark would want to visit District 10 himself. Loki and Hatchet knew what they needed for the repairs, but there were so many other tools and machines Loki could not identify. Stark would enjoy browsing, buying things that caught his eyes, exploring new technology. They definitely had to come back here before they left. It also turned out that to refill his potion cabinet, he would have to visit District 4, which was in a completely different part of the city. Hatchet explained that magic was a rarity here, and even after spending months here, he could only track down a few people who had such items to offer. He also suggested that if Loki was not in dire need of magical supplies, he should wait and purchase the items on a different planet. Here, they would cost a fortune. Sometimes Loki was frustrated about such things as much as Stark was. In Asgard, if something was not available for him in the palace, he could still just ride out into the forest and gather it himself. Now he was limited by things like money. Hatchet just laughed at him when he mentioned it. "Welcome to the world of commoners," he said. "I hope you'll enjoy your stay." They sat down for a warm meal after they were done at searching for the right tools. Hatchet chattered away about Delicanium and his locals. He talked about some other planets too, shared his experiences in this galaxy. Loki, in turn, told him about the Andromeda and all its various reptilian residents. Of course, he also had to talk about the rest of the crew. If Loki told enough about them, Hatchet would no longer consider them strangers. It would greatly improve his attitude towards them. So he made a point of talking about Stark's brilliant mind and Drongo's calm strength, and of course the girls. He told him how Bee was truly a force to be reckoned with, and that he trained Juyu himself, how quickly she learned. If Bee would speak, she would be even more useful, he said. It is hard to deceive others with appearances only. Juyu is still not skilled enough in subterfuge, and she is not as quick and precise with shape-shifting as Bee is. Oh, they're shapeshifters? Hatchet asked. Must be nice to be around kindred spirits. Well, they're scrolls, so they're shapeshift. What? Hatchet hissed as he leaned closer. He quickly looked around and locked his eyes on Loki again. They're scrolls? He asked in an harsh whisper, obviously not wanting to be overheard. Yes. Did I not mention this before? Loki asked. Shit! Hatchet cursed. Of course, this is my bloody rat arse gun fucking luck. I can't catch a fucking break, damn it! Hatchet, what? Up! Get up! Now! He urged, already on his feet and tossing a few notes on their table. Come on, move! He said again and grabbed hold of Loki's arm to drag him away from the table. What is it?
Loki demanded while Hatchet kept pulling him along. It's bad! It's so bad that it's light years away from good! It's troll with the hard cock wanting to play with you kinda bad! Horrifying image aside, what is it, Hatchet? This time he grabbed hold of the elf to stop him. We are pretty close to the Krees! That's what? Hatchet hissed. The Skrulls have invaded this planet before! That's what? They have security measures against possible Skrull invaders! That's what? Shapeshifting ain't gonna help and the city guard regularly searches the docks! What is the time? He cursed and started going again. Loki followed. And if they find them, it ain't gonna be pretty! You're gonna be in such deep trouble you've never been before! You're gonna be choking on it! We gotta run and hope we ain't late! Loki was sure that he personally was in bigger trouble before, but still... Shit! He cursed and they ran.